We good?
Yeah, we're good.
This week we're talking about something that is a little puzzling. All women rosters sparking outrage? That's right. Hi, I'm Ben Pfefferman and welcome to Esports Unfiltered, where every now and then we bring to you really interesting content, news, analysis, stories, scandals from the esports and gaming industry. Cloud9 recently announced their all-women roster for Valorant. Now, this type of announcement, really doesn't get that much attention, as just a typical roster announcement. But surprisingly, there was a lot of heat about this announcement, and I want to break down some of the reasons why people were critical of the announcement and why I think that's a lot of horse. It is kind of funny that there's a lot of criticism because this isn't the first all-women roster that's being announced, and it's not even the first all-women roster announced in Valorant. Dignitas has both a Valorant and a Counter-Strike roster. No one really batted an eye when those announcements were made. So why is it now that this big Cloud9 announcement is getting some criticism? What I did was I scoured Twitter, and I don't use Reddit, but LinkedIn a little bit to try to understand what are the main reasons why people are not happy with this move and announcement, because on the surface, what's there to be upset about? It's great to have more women in gaming. This is an easy one, right? Like, there's nothing controversial about this. But if we dig a little bit deeper, we can kind of understand some underlining concerns that people have. The first point is, why do women even need their own teams in esports? People are going to bring in the argument that, look, in traditional sports, there are biological differences between men and women that sort of necessitate for men and women to compete separately. And for the most part, most people agree. Men should compete against men, women should compete against women. That has been the norm for hundreds of years, and it preserves the competitive integrity of the sports. And of course, if there is a woman that wants to compete in a men's league, that's totally okay. We've seen a couple examples in pro sports. Tampa Bay Lightning had a goaltender that played an NHL game. So there are women that have excelled in that level and can compete in the men's league, but we don't allow the men to compete against women. So now you bring it to esports and ask, okay, well, esports isn't really a physical sport compared to traditional sports. So there shouldn't really be biological differences that would give men any competitive edge over women. Very much so, it's a mental competition. It's thinking, it's strategy, it's problem solving, it's critical thinking, all these things that really should have a completely level playing field between men and women. But the answer is actually kind of dark and disturbing. Let's take a look at this clip.
There is blatant sexism towards women in gaming. I've found a couple clips on Twitter that specifically target these women, and I'll show them to you.
Pussy. Can't handle the heat. What a fucking woman. Textbook woman can't handle the heat. Well,
one enemy remaining.
Don't defuse. You're throwing. Don't defuse.
I'm gonna mute this.
Stop.
How do you mute kids?
Look at this, bro. Textbook woman.
L4.
Textbook
L4.
woman.
People.
Diffusing and shit.
Yeah, imagine diffusing. It's literally for women. Only women would play by the rules. We're fucking cool kids, so we don't play by the rules.
Yeah, we don't diffuse. We suck it off so it just stops.
Kick that bitch to the curb, dog. She's disrespectful as fuck. She's not complying to your every demand, then what is she doing?
Look, he's blocking me, and he's gonna fucking use his spell like this. Just cause I'm a girl.
What do you mean?
Like, I can't even get out of it, look.
Try to come to my side, boy.
What?
Broxy.
What is your problem?
Broxy, you slut. What's your gender?
I have to give you some credit as a Twitch streamer. Cause like, you'd think you'd have to be hotter to have this much followers.
In many games, there is still this toxic and sexist culture. And it's a barrier for a lot of women who are pursuing either competitive play or even looking to be a content creator. So why is this announcement significant? Is that a lot of women want to play with women. They want to play against other women and want to be able to play in a safe space that's not filled with all the sexism, misogyny, and toxic behavior that goes on in many online sports. Number 2, does this announcement, which is intended to promote inclusion, actually promote exclusion by separating women from other esports? In this case of this Cloud9 roster, there is a men's roster and a women's roster, and the skill level of the men's roster is much greater. So are you creating kind of a 2-tier system where you have a very good men's roster that competes at a higher level and a women's roster competing at a lower level? So the argument I was reading about is, why not have a mixed roster? If the goal really is parity, then take the best women and best men and put them on the same teams. That's a better way to create that parity. If the goal is to really integrate and have women play at the same level, what does it do when you have a male roster and a women's roster that is secondary competing in lower tournaments? And does creating this 2-tier system perpetuate the stereotype that men are better at video games than women? And number 3, there is no women's league. Now you can argue there isn't really a men's league either, but there's a lot of tournaments with big prize money. So if you're gonna make this big roster announcement of an all women's team, where are they competing? You know, what's their ability to make an income? Is this gonna perpetuate the pay gap disparity between a men's team that's gonna compete in all these big tournaments, win all this big prize money, and a women's roster that has very few tournaments to compete at and very little prize money to win? So if Cloud9 or Dignitas or any other esports org that is putting out an all women's roster, if they really care about it, they would create a league structure. They would create the infrastructure in partnership with a Riot Games or a tournament operator to make sure that the women's team has the same opportunities that a men's team has. Otherwise, this announcement is just kind of a one-off and doesn't really amount to anything. All in all, I think it's a great announcement that Cloud9 is going to be fielding a competitive roster, an all-women's roster in Valorant, but I do think they need to be sensitive to the concerns and criticisms of the community. It's great you're fielding this team, but if the goal really is gender parity in esports, then a lot more has to be done. That infrastructure has to be built. The tournaments, the prize pools, everything needs to match what a competing men's team would be making. That's the only way they can really make a difference. I'm Ben Pfefferman. G2 and Top Esports screwed me over in my bracket, but nonetheless, I will be back another day. Stay classy, Fredericton, and I am out of here.